welcome everyone. This is Jump and Shoot, the Mega Man Reddit podcast. I'm Joey, and I'm joined by my co-host here, Wesley Basil Crowan.
Hello there.
This is going to be our pilot episode, so what better subject to tackle than the Mega Man X Legacy Collection, right? And today we're going to be talking presentation, production, and maybe give some detailed analyses of the collection's features and a little bit about the games themselves. But before we get started, this feels like a pretty good opportunity to divulge some personal information about ourselves before we get into the thick of it. So, Wesley, if you want to take it away.
Right. My name is Vasily Warnoy, but nobody will remember that. So instead I go by my pen name, which is like what would happen if it was legal to translate/localize people's names. So it's Wesley Basil Crowan. I just recently finished up marathoning the Mega Man X series, and now busy with the recently developed Platinum Trophy Addiction, with my 10th trophy being for Dead Space 2. And by that I mean, I'm having a really hell of a time trying to get that plat, because I have to beat the game in hardcore mode. And that thing is the most genius way to create tension. Because once you die, you have to start all over, unless you have 3 saves. So basically I'm super into horror, which is why I'm also obligatorily a massive fan of Resident Evil. But I also fancy myself into 2D games from time to time, Castlevania, Sonic the Hedgehog, and of course, Mega Man. I also love everything's geeky and sentiently furred, if that's not controversial enough.
Ooh, boy. Starting off hot.
Oh yeah, really, really hot. But I gotta promise you, I gotta treat everyone like a human being. Alright? Alright.
Well, now that we know that Wesley mains Fox and Falco and Smash, I'm Joey. I don't have a cool handle, but my name on most things is Verse and Coma. I usually play 2D games, JRPGs, fighting games, that kind of sort. I've just played through Octopath Traveler recently. Been playing Castlevania a lot again after that Simon Belmont reveal in Smash, which, even though he looks a little bit... Right. And he looks a little bit like Thor from Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Like, he's real strong like that, you know?
And I don't mind that. Also, Richter's looking pretty hot.
Richter's looking good, man. So normally I have like a predilection toward 2D action games, so Mega Man is obviously right up my alley here. Also been pretty stoked on Windjammers recently, and they're actually today it was announced that Windjammers 2 is coming out, which that's huge, man. I mean, I don't think Data East has a whole lot to go with that, but I think they've been defunct for a long time now. But I'm still really pumped. So Windjammers 2, man, it's coming on the Switch. And the last thing I could really offer is I learned how to read from Zelda and Mega Man, so there's that. Now that you know a little bit about us, we can just go into the nitty-gritty here. So, with the release of the X Legacy Collections, how do we feel that these games have lived up to expectations? What are they offering here? What's in the package here, Capcom? So for those of you who don't know, the X Legacy Collection is split up into 2 parts. And the first one is Mega Man X 1 through 4, and the second part is Mega Man X 5 through 8. One of the most important things about this is why these collections were split up in the way that they were. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the extra features, which are Rookie Hunter mode, X Challenge mode, some of the trophies, /achievements /medals. We're probably going to be using those terms interchangeably. And what does this mean really for the future of the series? So, Wesley, what platforms was this released on, and what are some of the differences that you can think of?
All right, so it was released July 24th in US and America for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Via Steam, of course. And 2 days later in Japan, because apparently Capcom thinks that Mega Man is much more profitable overseas than domestically, which is amusing. The collections were developed in-house, just like Mega Man Legacy Collection 2, unlike Legacy Collection 1, which was developed by Digital Eclipse.
Digital Eclipse, right.
And this was announced pretty shortly after Legacy Collection 2 hit the store shelves. And it was basically just announced as a 8-game package, the entire mainline X series, barring some minor spin-offs like the Extreme Games Command Mission and Maverick Hunter X. It's all core numbered titles here, from X1 right through to X8.
And no Command Mission, which we'll get to.
Sadly, not Command Mission.
Because it was in-house, right? What do you think that allowed Capcom to do that they wouldn't have been able to do with Digital Eclipse handling the whole package, for example?
First of all, having direct access to the source code, unless they've been shitty at preserving it, which I actually doubt, because as far as I know, X7 and X8 are direct ports of the source.
Okay. And, okay, that makes sense. Because, I mean, a lot of people were sort of critical of Digital Eclipse in the past. And, before I even continue, I really need to bring up the fact that this is actually not the first Mega Man X collection. So, this is going to get a little confusing, but there's a whole buttload of Mega Man collections throughout the years. And it's difficult to talk about this one without talking about the Mega Man X collection, which was Mega Man X1 through X6. This was released for GameCube and PS2. And on top of that, you have the Mega Man Anniversary Collection, which was the classic Mega Man games, also released on GameCube, PS2, and Xbox. And this was Mega Man 1 through 8, because 9 and 10 were yet to be released.
As well as the arcade fighting games.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to get into, is the biggest difference between these collections, and we could talk about a whole stream of minutia about why some of these are better or worse ports, but the collections for the PS2 and GameCube and Xbox, they actually had additional games like Power Fighters, Battle and Chase. What's the other one that was on there? I think it was like the precursor to Power Fighters or something. I forgot the name of it.
The Power Battles, the Power Fighters, and Battle and Chase for the X collection.
Yeah, Power Battles and Power Fighters. They're two different games. So those collections had these little additional games, and the Mega Man X Legacy Collection, which just came out, doesn't, and neither does the Mega Man Legacy Collection, which also came out about a year and a half ago, which is the classic games. Those didn't have any extra features either. So because we're just looking at the mainline titles here, what do you think should have been added in these collections, if anything?
Right, so it's quite obvious that Capcom are aiming for a 4-in-1 package deal. For example, Legacy Collection 2 was just Mega Man 7, 8, 9, and 10. No and base, sadly, but, I'm kind of not regretting that.
Hey, I like Mega Man and base, but I am a glutton for punishment, so it is what it is.
Yeah, and it's very easy to see the pattern here, because X Legacy Collection 1 is just 4 games, X1, X2, X3, and X4, and X Legacy Collection 2 is X5, X6, X7, and X8. While it is pretty good for basically definitive mainline Mega Man X experience, I would definitely think that it would be pretty cool to see another 5th game added in the lineup for each collection. Like, for example, pair up X1 through X4 with Maverick Hunter X in the first X Legacy Collection, and then add Mega Man X Command Mission in X Legacy Collection 2.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? Like each of those games, Extreme especially, I think Extreme 1 is kind of garbage to be honest with you. But it sucks that these aren't part of the collection. It really wouldn't be that out of scope for them to have included these things, especially Command Mission, which I feel is like kind of it's very integral to the Mega Man X storyline, even though it's a side story. Like it builds the universe in a way that some of the later X games don't really do. So it would have been really cool to have these features, and I don't really know what Capcom's plan is here. Is it just them saying, "Oh, we only want to include the mainline titles because those are the only ones worth caring about"? Like, so in other matters, is it like for the sake of brevity to just only have these mainline titles, or is it something like we're trying to milk you to buy these in a different collection? We have yet to see what their game plan is here. But like, if those games were in this, like if Extreme and Command Mission and Maverick Hunter X, which is a remake of the original Mega Man X, if all these were in this, what would you have liked to see them? How would you like to have seen them be handled in this collection?
Well, basically, in case with Maverick Hunter X, just an up-res port would do fine. Command Mission, which one has the most generous enemy encounter rate? The GameCube version?
I think the GameCube version, yeah.
Yeah, then it's the GameCube version of Command Mission. I don't think necessarily up-resing, because games
Yeah.
that were meant to be made for 4:3 ratio don't really translate well into 16:9. For example, the Sly Collection does have some obvious artifacts from not being adapted properly. And then there's Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, which has some of the cutscenes but blatantly play in 4:3 ratio just because of the effects. Yeah, you know what? A simple remastering with up-res graphics and properly functioning, that's most important, is what I like to see. But alas, I can always emulate them.
Right. And just so everybody knows, these every single game on the X Legacy Collection, which I'm just going to call the XLC from now on, just sounds like a really bad like mumble rapper. But either way, on the XLC, they all offer multiple versions. So you have like the Japanese version, the English version that you could switch to before you load up the game. So it's like it kind of begs the question of, if you're going to go through the effort to add all this extra stuff, why aren't there kind of the side games instead? Like, I would have much rather it had Mega Man Extreme 1 and 2, even though I don't like them, than, I don't know, like the Chinese language version of it or the Italian version of X8, something like that. So I don't know, it's kind of bothersome. I almost wonder if there's going to be DLC for this. There wasn't in the Mega Man Classic Legacy Collection, but if there was DLC, what would you like to see in it?
Okay, first of all, I kind of want to correct you because there is actually one secret side game packed into
Really?
these collections. Yes.
What, really?
Really.
What is it?
Rockman X Mega Mission cards in the goodies section.
Oh, that doesn't count.
Otherwise, yeah, the collection is kind of lacking on the side titles, which doesn't make it super definitive package, but I also kind of question this aspect. So in XLC2, we got full effects setup for X7 and X8. You got the English version, you got the British English version of X7 and X8, both of which are coming with brilliantly packaged in title screen.
And they just move the E and the R around, and that's pretty much what you're getting that version for.
Yeah, so it's not center, it's centre.
Centre.
Yeah, French, Italian, Spanish, even Chinese version, just like you mentioned, and of course the Japanese versions. But all that, and yet they only packaged in the Super Nintendo version of X3, which, is kind of a touchy subject. I grew up with the CD version of X3, and I felt kind of bummed out that it's not really in the collection, because while there are a good chunk of people who think that the arranged soundtrack is absolutely garbage.
Yes, it is. I am in that camp.
I don't know, it brings nostalgic feelings to me.
But at least the option to be there, like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's not a huge difference. Like, there's not a lot of version differences between the Super Nintendo version and the PSX/PSC version of X3. But having that there would have been awesome, even if it was just in the museum mode. And
yeah,
that's
definitely.
that's an aside. I forgot to mention that there's like a museum mode with a bunch of pictures and documents about some models, toys, some trailers, mostly Japanese trailers for the X games as they came out, and the Day of Sigma OVA. Is that what it's called? OVA?
Yes, OVA, original video animation.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And then there are some extras here, but they're not as integrative. They don't add a whole lot to gameplay. Unlike having the option to be able to see the PC and PSX version of X3's cutscenes, or being able to switch the music from SNES to PC rearranged would have been really cool. And it's not like that's adding a whole lot of production work, right?
Right, right. But it may tie into how X3 is presented as overall. But I'm not really that tight of an expert.
Yeah, I think, and we kind of brought this up earlier, but I think it almost seems like they're trying to have such a level of consistency that it's rigid. So they're only trying to present the first three games as Super Nintendo games, and along with that, unfortunately, is the added side effect of cutting out the additional features of X3 on PC and PSX. And it's a bummer because I have a friend who grew up in Saudi Arabia, and his connection to X3 was actually the PC version.
Just like
So
me.
what's that?
Just like me.
Yeah, like you, exactly. And so like he's not a huge Mega Man fan. And so like when he bought the collection, he's like, where are the cutscenes? Where are the corny ass cutscenes, And I had explained to him, and it's just like, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who go into this collection and that's never even a thing, but it's something about that just irks me, and especially after them going through the trouble to make these additional versions. But what about X4 differences too? Because there's a Saturn version of X4,
Yes,
right?
a Sega Saturn version. Basically, the only difference that matters is the gamepad of choice. The Saturn version did add some neat heat background effect to certain stages, like the
Oh,
second,
the intro.
yeah, like the
Magma
second half of the intro stage and Magma Dragoon stage, and because of the Saturn's transparency weirdness, spotlights are rendered in weird cross-hatched way, and of course, the soundtrack has been slightly redone, so it features proper loops. So
Oh,
certain
that's actually huge.
yeah, so certain musical tracks do begin with neat little crescendos, like the most poignant example is Egregian's theme, which has an
This is the
opening.
first boss of the
Yes,
intro stage.
yes, that's the opening. Yes, that's the intro stage boss.
The dragon who gets just obliterated in 2 seconds.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's like there. That kind of makes me want each song to have the opening of Crush Crawfish's song, like the like that shreddy ass part.
yeah,
That it's dope. But I think that's awesome because there is kind of a tendency for a lot of almost lazy looping in the X4, the PSX version of X4,
or Sonic Jam.
It's like the song, yeah, it just kind of blends in too much. It sounds fake. So it's like it almost makes me kind of. I know that's such a minor nitpick, but I mean, again, I'd rather have the Saturn version than the UK English version.
Yeah, but unlike X3, I don't think lack of Saturn version is really anything to be generally worrying about.
Right. Yeah.
Unlike Mega Man 8, which actually had some distinct features, like having 2 additional boss fights and slightly redone soundtrack, but which has even more drastic
Yeah.
differences than just X4 looping, and
Yeah.
that's
I
it.
actually prefer Mega Man 8 on the Saturn to the PlayStation version. It seems much more refined.
It has slightly richer instrumentation, and the new Tengu Man stage theme is amazing.
Yeah, and there's less energy pickups just randomly in the stage, so the difficulty feels more consistent too. Um, but luckily, you don't really see a lot of differences like that in the X series. So it's a little aside, but I think it's important to mention regardless.
Right. Another topic that I kind of want to bring up right now, before we completely forget about it. While it's very easy to conjecturize that they want to sell you a package of 4 games into one, I do generally believe that this was intended to be an 8-in-1 kind of a deal for $40. And the evidence of it is very apparent, especially if you dig into the files. So if you go and check the files of the PC version of the X Legacy Collection available on Steam, you're going to notice that for some reason, X Legacy Collection 1 has soundtrack files for X5, X6, X7, and X8, which is kind of weird because those
Right.
are.
And, well, that might have also been to be consistent. Like they might have thought that like if you buy XLC2, you might still be able to listen to the first collection's music instead. Like it might have given you that option. It's weird how that is. Like it's obviously that it's obvious that it was designed initially to be just one package.
Definitely. Also, the goodies section, in order to save time in downloading X Legacy Collection 2, you can just copy and paste the goodies section file, and the X Legacy Collection 2 will gladly accept that and will not overwrite the files. The goodies section is pretty much duplicated between 2 collections. Here's another.
And yeah, and Day of Sigma is on both collections, and so are the museum. Most of the museum files, like the pictures of the toys, models, like weird
Product catalog, yeah.
yeah, the product catalog. That's a much easier way to say that.
Yeah.
That's on there, but the concept art and just official illustrations is respective to the each individual collection. So only the X1 through 4 art stuff is on collection 1, and only the X5 through 8 art stuff is on collection 2.
Yeah, and just as a heads up, no, there is no secret concept art image for X9.
Yeah, well, at least not overtly, right? Because there's that picture of Iris if you beat X challenge mode, which we'll also get to in a little bit. But if you beat X challenge mode on hard, you get like a suggestive, both sexually and otherwise, picture of Iris. So it's almost like, is that Capcom acknowledging that character and saying like, keep that character in mind because we might be using her again soon, or is it just fan service?
Fan service, she's long dead. Yeah, right. Another evidence is that the fact that when you buy the collections physically on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, you get them on both discs. You can't buy them physically separately, at least in America and Europe. It will always come with 2 Blu-rays. Yeah, it'll always come in 2 Blu-rays. On Switch, it's slightly more complicated because you technically get 2, but only the first collection is on physical cart, whereas XLC2 is just a download code. To save money in production costs, I assume you.
And as an aside too, it's really interesting. As of this date, what is it, August 20th? Now, if you go to the Switch eStore and you look at the top sellers, Mega Man X Legacy Collection 2 is actually outselling the first one, but I think that's because more people are downloading that one because it's digital only than the first, rather than it's just straight up outselling. It is like because you can buy a physical copy of XLC 1, so I'm pretty sure that's the reason. But because I can't see a universe in where XLC 2 is actually outselling the first.
Yeah, that's kind of dumb that it counts as sales like that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just products downloaded, but because it's a free product code is essentially what you get.
Right. And, I think the decision to split the collections might have came pretty late into the development, like a week or 2 weeks before the first trailer footage emerged. And it's very apparent that they were meant to be inseparable from each other. But for the sake of more prospective sales numbers, they split the collections because they figured that they can sell more copies of just X1 through X4, the most desired games.
Right, like that is the quintessential X game. Though those are the quintessential X games. I feel
Yeah.
like in Capcom's side.
Yeah, for just $20, that'll stack up more money than if you just sold everything for $40.
Right. And this leads to a really interesting point, and there's so many things going on here because if you look for historical or perspective rather, if you look at the Mega Man Classic Legacy collections, which were also split into two. So like I said, it was Mega Man 1 through 6, the NES games on one collection, and then 7 through 10 on the second collection. It was kind of the same bit, and people were kind of irked by that because they're like, why don't you just put it all on one? But I think one of the main reasons, besides the logistics of it, is just that they wanted to try to gauge what the sales would be like to pilot a new game in the series, right? So I'm guessing Mega Man Legacy Collection 1, which is the NES games, outsold 2 by a considerable margin. So they were like, okay, how is this going to affect our development for Mega Man 11? Which the sales of these games led them to green lighting Mega Man 11. They've even overtly said it. So I wonder if that's going to be the case with X9 or the potentiality of an X9.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's also plenty of evidence showing that, yes, they're very passionate about developing X9. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's got to be their next project after Mega Man 11 releases.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, if there is an X9, I agree. I don't think that you would see any word about it until after 11 releases, just to kind of like partition the hype. So if there is going to be something, we won't see it for a little while, even though I do know that the X Legacy collections have been selling pretty well relatively to the series.
Right, though I do need to correct you a little bit. Basically, the reason the classic games were split like that is because Digital Eclipse wanted to pitch Capcom a method for releasing old NES titles. And
I see.
And with the biggest example being the classic NES Mega Man games, which were 6 plenty, which also led to re-releasing the Disney titles in the Disney Afternoon collection. Which were also emulated NES games, just like the Mega Man Legacy collection. So it wasn't really because they wanted to split the collections, but because they wanted to show up the tech that would be viable for old NES titles, which carried over with enough interest into the later titles. But this also served as a great measuring tool for measuring interest in classic Mega Man as well.
Oh yeah, and I always try to look at these things from like a market research perspective too. It's like I have a little experience in the field, and I see how that affects so many elements of game design now and production today. So it's like so much time and energy is going into looking and analyzing the data for who is buying these collections. I guarantee Capcom has a team of people who are looking at the trophy lists and are saying like, oh, X amount of people completed this game not on Rookie Hunter mode, which I think is one of the reasons why the trophies have like a exclusionary statement saying it can only be used in not in Rookie Hunter mode. So, I think there's a lot of data being gathered there and being, analyzed and broken apart. So, it makes me wonder what their end game is here. And I don't know if you remember this, Wesley, but when around the time Legends 3 was canceled and there was such a huge fan outcry because
definitely.
everyone's pissed off, right?
Oh, definitely.
Like,
My cousin specifically bought 3DS just to play Legends 3. Boy, was he in for a nasty surprise the next day.
oh man, poor Volnut. Yeah, but like when that happened, people were pissed, and Capcom was like, "Man, what do we do with Mega Man? We've just been doing him dirty for so long. We put him in this this fighting game as box art Mega Man. He's out of Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Like, what? Like, why can't we do this character right?" And so I think that their way of fixing that is they piloted these surveys that I'm sure you took when they came out, as any fan would.
Yeah.
And they were basically trying to, I think, separate people and determine archetypes for what kind of people are buying these games and what people are looking for. So the questions were like, what if there was a collection? What do you want in a Mega Man game? And the options were like a brand new Mega Man game, a Mega Man game based off like the retro style, and then another one was like a collection of games. And you could select multiple items in this list. So I think a lot of that data was used in production for A, the Legacy collections, B, Mega Man 11, and C, possibly an X8 or maybe another spin-off.
X9.
I'm sorry, X9. I don't like to think that X7 exists, so it's just kind of like a void in my head.
Understandably.
Right. So I mean, like, I could speak to, I kind of want to, but hold off for now. Speaking about the market aspect of this, but I think that's one of the reasons why it was split into two. And I also think that Capcom really wanted to make people like who are unfamiliar with these games to kind of come to take away a very positive reception. So, for example, X1 through 4, like you said, are kind of like the good games or whatever. So I think most people who are new to the series are going to get that collection first. And this is subjective, but it seems like those are the better games. And then if they like those games, they'll go into XLC2 and play 5 through 8. I mean, I'm sure there are people who would rather play XLC2, and I'm sure there are people who like XLC2 looks more appealing to them because visually it kind of does in some ways.
I'm not exactly that kind of person, but I do really, really love X5 and really like X8. But that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, like, no, there's nothing bad as a whole about that collection. Well, as a whole about the collection, like there's a lot of really good stuff there. I just think from like an outsider perspective, if you're going to play the Mega Man X games, I think most people start off from the beginning. But again, this is something that I'm sure Capcom is gauging. And one of the reasons why it was split into two.
Yeah, so ideally, XLC1 is great for newcomers to the series. XLC2 is for people who definitely know that they are Mega Man X fans.
Right, it's a fan check. I don't know. I think a lot of people digitally will end up buying the first one just because it's there, and it gives Capcom an opportunity to. It probably makes them a little bit more in the end. I don't know the data on that. That's just conjecture. It probably makes them a little bit more on the end, and like they're able to more easily sort of view their market data for the games. But I think the other reason why it's split, and this is purely logistical, is the size of the games. Because, like, you said that there were different file types per version, right?
Yeah. Basically, XLC1 is about 9 gigabytes on PlayStation 4, at least, last time I checked. And XLC2 is pretty much almost 20 gigs.
Which is enormous for this type of game.
Yeah, most likely because X7 and X8 eFix padded it all out.
Yeah, and the multiple versions do add up. And so and I think this is pretty much all we can really say about why the collections are split. But going back to the different types of games that are on this collection for a second, X1 through 3 are just kind of ROMs, correct?
Right, so in Legacy Collection 2 of the classic Mega Man, all games were actually direct ports, even the SNES classic Mega Man 7, which
Okay.
obviously was direct port simply to accommodate the new features of that collection, that is the challenge mode, and as well as the checkpoint system. Unfortunately, they went the cheap route when it comes to X Legacy Collection because X1, X2, and X3 are pretty much emulations, with the only integrated part being maybe the icons in the key mapper, as well as the save function, the password save function.
Right. Which, just for those who don't know, there isn't like a hard save option for Mega Man X1 through 3. It just basically saves the password, because X1 through 3 ran on a password system rather than battery saves. So, like, let's say you beat 3 stages in Mega Man X. Your way of saving it is essentially like auto load, saving the password and then auto loading it.
Right. So you don't have to write it all down. You just have to save it in the system memory and then come back to it later. But
which again is different in the X collection for GameCube and PS2, because in those versions there was a hard save function, correct?
yes, and you had 3 slots.
Yeah, okay. So it's weird how that's not a thing, but we'll get to that in a bit.
The versions of X1 and X2 were actually kind of like, I wouldn't say direct ports, but more like recreations with their own interesting differences. Like, X saying damn in the intro stage screen, in the intro stage dialogue, and in X2 having kind of mistimed opening sequence. X1, X2, and X3 pretty much don't have any benefits of that. I also need to stress that the collections do not have the save state functionality like the Legacy Collection 1, as well as the checkpoint save like Legacy Collection 2. So you can only
or the
rely...
rewind feature in or the Switch version, which is apparently supposed to be something that they're porting to the Mega Man Legacy collections on PS4, on Xbox One, and PC.
Yeah, Digital Eclipse said that they're adding these features in an update, which is really damn nice. I do want to experiment with the sense of time in my classic Mega Man.
Mega Man Prince of Persia crossover.
Ooh, that's a frustrating platformer duo for ages.
That's a good segue into what kind of options are available here for these games. Like, I think Capcom's way of sort of not allowing save states is Rookie Hunter mode. Would you say that's a fair assumption?
Yeah, that's a fair assumption.
And I think a lot of people going into this collection are going to be a little pissed because they're going to be like, how come these features that were in the classic games are not in this one? But I don't know. I feel like save states in an actual like console game just feel weird. It feels like cheating. I don't know. So does Rookie Hunter mode, but less so, I think, than actual save states. So let's talk
if
about
you constantly save scum everywhere every 5 seconds, it's cheating, all right. But it's not like you're forced to use it.
Right, totally. And it's cool to have that option, but I don't know. I feel like it lends itself to bad habits for newcomers. Honestly, I think Capcom sees that, and I think that's why they put Rookie Hunter mode in there instead. Like, because Rookie Hunter mode essentially makes it so you don't have to try at all, so you can just play through the games and don't have to worry. It's like a low stress mode. So, what are your thoughts on Rookie Hunter mode, Wes?
Normally, I didn't play through these games in Rookie Hunter mode, so I had to delve into a little bit of research in my taking my sweet time out of it. And what they did for the Rookie Hunter mode is actually kind of interesting, but also kind of lame. They altered the damage output in the enemies. So, like, small enemies deal 1 pixel damage instead of 2 pixels of damage. However, the damage values for bigger enemies is kind of screwed up because they essentially can't hurt you. Like,
Right.
those big enemies that send rockets and plasma shots on the ground in the intro stage of X1, they can't hurt you. The only way they can hurt you is if you physically ram into them, and that deals only like 1 pixel of damage.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So like so the damage scaling is a little skewed for Rookie Hunter mode.
Yeah, it also makes it also affects Mavericks too, so the regular attacks can't hurt you. They can't possibly kill you unless they
Wow.
constantly ram into you.
But so contact damage does still, like that doesn't get taken away. Only projectile damage, basically.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's another thing too is that the Rookie Hunter mode for each game is different almost because in X1 through 3, if you fall in a pit, you straight up die still. But in, 4 through 8, if you fall in a pit in Rookie Hunter mode, you essentially respawn from the last stable ground you were on.
Yeah, and it's not very consistent, and it makes quite obvious that X1 through X3 are emulated, because X4 through 8 do enjoy the benefits of being direct ports. Because I recently discovered that Rookie Hunter mode not only adds the invulnerability to pits and reduces damage when you take if you hit the spikes, which usually
Right.
just insta kill you. It also adds platforms in X6.
Which is, I actually didn't know this. I saw a picture of the gate fight in X6 on the Mega Man Reddit Discord, and it had a ground instead of a pit in it. And if anyone who's played through X6, I'm sure has raged at that gate fight. But I thought that was a Photoshop of somebody just being a little, like a wiener, you know. But it's actually what Rookie Hunter mode does.
It's legit. I played it. I know it. It's there. And yeah, so X6 was very happy to have a level design that just doesn't exist with massive pits like Dimps games. So they added a lot of platforms in long bottomless pit sections, like that gate fight, and also Inami Temple, which is Rainy Turtloid's stage.
Oh yeah. Huh. So I think a lot of people would argue that this makes X6 more playable on a casual level.
Yeah, you barely
which
take
I
damage
disagree
there.
with, but-
You barely take damage there, and you're constantly taking potshot damage in that game. So,
Oh yeah.
coupled with Ultimate Armor, it makes the game much more bearable.
Yeah, and I think that's the same with X5 in a lot of ways too. It's just a lot less punishing, and X7, but kind of for a different reason. Because like X7, there are a lot of deaths in that game that are just due to the terrible camera or the controls or some weird, like the physics feel like Legos. So you're dying a lot in X7 to like just poor design. And I think Rookie Hunter mode makes the game a lot more more playable, if that's a thing.
Yeah, definitely. I also need to stress that X5 and X6 have easy modes, and you can totally stack them
Oh,
up.
native to the game. Yeah.
Yeah, you can totally stack them with Rookie Hunter mode to make the game even more easy.
Right, totally. And it's like, I don't know, there's that old fighting game adage that's like, the first round is data. So I feel like Rookie Hunter mode for a lot of people is a good way to go through the games and kind of see what to expect, maybe get a feel for boss patterns, get a feel for a stage. So, you don't die to something that you just straight up don't see, like Toxic Seahorse's stage in Mega Man X3 is a really good example, or most of X6 is another really good example. So like I appreciate it for that. And I also think it opens up interesting options for speedruns. Maybe there'll be like a Rookie Hunter category. I don't know. Probably not. But it is good. It is good to like kind of practice jumps and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
But how do you Go ahead.
with the invulnerability to spikes, well, I say invulnerability, you actually do take a little bit of damage. it has the potential to alter routes, but I don't really see Rookie Hunter mode being a category for speedrunning, at least widely acceptable.
Right, and my favorite example, the only thing I really liked Rookie Hunter mode for, and I didn't. By the way, this is a humble brag, but I got all the trophies in this game without it because I thought that even turning it on would disable trophies. But I just wanted to be safe.
Same.
Well, that's because we both hate ourselves, and we want to do things the hard way. But I think the thing I found it most useful for was it really eliminates the backtracking in X5. Like you can do Grizzly Slash's stage first, and then is that his? No, is it? It's Crescent Grizzly, right?
Crescent Grizzly, right.
Yeah.
It's one of those interesting changes for this collection.
Which will, yeah, I definitely want to get. I want to touch on that too. The weird fixes, but it allows you to do something like get the heart tank in that stage earlier, or you can get the heart tank in Izzy Glow stage. There's a lot of things like that really make the game a lot more tolerable to play through, even if you just switch it on for a second.
Right.
But like, how do you feel as a whole about it? Do you feel like you're cheating yourself if you turn this mode on?
Honestly, it does spoil you, just like easy mode in Mega Man 10, which just threw you Yoshichis everywhere. But at the same time, this is a great difficulty for the newcomers to get comfortable with the games, especially if it's their first time. For example, Mega Man X3 wasn't just my first X game. It was my first Mega Man game ever that introduced me to the franchise. I remember playing this game, and I remember absolutely hating it. Like, I wanted to love it, but I couldn't.
X3?
Yes. Because you know why? The damage output in that game is ridiculous.
It's wacky, yeah. I don't know. I love X3 personally, but there's definitely a lot of kind of strange design impetus in that game.
Yeah, you know, right? With a lot of enemies just dealing so much damage, I die in seconds. And as a kid who wasn't really skilled at 2D platformers, that was soul crushing.
I mean, dude, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think the game is easy now, but when I was a kid, like Kaiser Sigma made me cry, like legit.
Yeah,
made me sob.
Yeah, I could definitely understand why. I never beat Kaiser Sigma as a child.
But now he's fucking easy. Like, I think he's easier with the X Buster or just without the hyper chip. Like, you can do a good job just shooting lemons at him.
Right. So, back on topic. The PC version did have an easy mode, but I didn't feel like it was enough. With Rookie Hunter mode, I think X3 would have been so much more bearable and fun for me as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I also did a little experiment with my little 5-year-old sister. I gave her a shot at Mega Man games. She basically went
like a shot, like you took blood from her, or like gave her adrenaline.
Oh god. Okay, maybe Mega Man Adrenaline, yeah.
Which may be necessary for some people to beat some of those games.
Yeah, so she only went as far as to being Flashman and Airman in Mega Man 2, which I personally think is kind of badass because I actually didn't put it in the normal mode, but...
It's actually pretty impressive, honestly.
She did require a little bit of help from me, but she actually did Airman on her own.
See, I told my brother, who's a lot younger than me, a long time ago, when he was probably like 12, I was like, I gave him Mega Man 2 on my 3DS. I was like, if you can beat this game in 5 hours, I'll buy you a PS4.
Oh, that backfired, didn't it?
No, he actually, I think he might have gotten to Flashman, but didn't beat him. And he's like super good at games, dude. He can pick up any modern FPS game and just destroy it, like absolutely destroy it. So it's a weird generational gap, but that's a whole topic in and of itself. But so how did your sister react to this, to playing the X games?
Yeah,
or to the classic games, I'm sorry.
She kind of liked them, but she demanded that I give her back her Angry Birds that I held ransom.
Angry Bird Man
Yeah, and
crossover.
yeah, and I gave her X1. She went as far as being the intro stage, and that's it. Although she never died, aside from falling into pits twice at the very beginning, she did note that the game was pretty fun, even with the Rookie Hunter mode on. But she then quickly wanted to get back to her Angry Birds, the Star Wars version.
Whew. There's no
Yeah.
hope for kids today, man.
I don't know. I'll try again in 2 years. Maybe she'll have a little bit more bro tastes.
Well, this is interesting too. It's a little bit of a tangent, but I noticed a lot of younger fans on the Reddit itself, the subreddit, and also the Reddit Discord, because there's a lot of kids there who are like 13 to 17 and who are like genuinely super interested in Mega Man. So it's awesome to see that the franchise still has that appeal.
Still has relevancy.
Yeah, it's still relevant, and I'm glad that for all the shit that I talk about this collection and some of the design choices in the later games, it's awesome to see this available, and I'm really thankful that it's here and released on on multiple platforms.
Oh yeah.
And given these things like Rookie Hunter mode that allow the game to be a little bit more accessible. But as a whole, Rookie Hunter mode just like I feel like it destroys the game, and I'm probably elitist in this, but I feel like it just kind of eliminates a lot of what makes Mega Man. And I mean, it's kind of like a countermeasure to some of the later games' clunky or janky design for sure. But I don't know. Part of the rite of passage to me is that like hair pulling difficulty or frustration. It's like you have to go through these emotions naturally.
Yeah, right. But at the same time, I do think there is a relevancy to this mode because a lot of people think Mega Man games are hard until they get good, just like Dark Souls.
Right.
And the really great feature about the Rookie Hunter mode is that you can actually turn it on at any time. It's not a setting that you set at the very beginning that
right.
You
It's an easy switch.
Yeah, so you can. So if there's a particular part of the game that you just want to move on and you don't even care about any elitist privilege, then you can just turn on Rookie Hunter mode temporarily and beat Armored Armadillo.
Dude, I honestly hate it. I hate that concept. I think you should have to suffer through it. That's me personally, I recognize the fact that that's kind of elitist, but I think that's it makes gamers get spoiled. I don't mean to sound like a weird like right-wing baby boomer, but like honestly, like I feel like it does spoil people to some extent, even though it's optional. You're right; it's completely optional. I think it's a crutch that's available to this generation that we didn't have. So all you kids, get off my lawn. Just get out. I need a shotgun for this. If there's any reason to join the Mega Man Discord, there's a emoji on that Discord that has Mega Man with the rifle, and it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But anything else that we could touch on with Rookie Hunter mode?
You know what? I think we covered it all relatively.
Okay, so X Challenge mode. Wesley, did you want to talk about it?
Right, so in the classic Legacy Collection, there were challenges. There weren't really anything special. It's just take a random level or boss from any of the numbered titles, mix them up, put them together, and make it timed. That sort of thing. What they got going in X Legacy Collection, though, is actually much more interesting and much more distinct, and playing on the main strength of the X series, the boss fights themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably my favorite thing about the series.
Yeah, so in X Challenge, you get to fight Mavericks from X1, X2, right through X6. And it's not just one Maverick, it's two Mavericks at a time. And you're equipped with a really weird looking white ultimate armor.
Yeah, and the sprite on that is glitchy too. I've
The sprite
noticed.
in that is garbage. It lacks proper shading, but it does look decent in the concept artwork.
Yeah, it's cool looking. It just like in practice, it's coded really weird or programmed really weird.
Yeah. And the main feature of it is that it's X from X6, which means that he can use the Z Saber at any time. But just like Mega Man The Wily Wars, you can also pick up to 3 weapons of choice in each stage. Alright, so X Challenge has 9 stages in it. Each stage has 3 acts, I suppose.
Yeah, I'd say that sounds right.
So you fight 6 Mavericks. You get to preview all of them beforehand to make things fair, and you got a selection of weapons, some of which are direct weaknesses of those Mavericks. And once you start and pick all the weapons, you're committed to that loadout. So
Loadout is exactly what it feels like. It feels
Yeah.
it's the closest that Mega Man comes to Call of Duty.
yeah,
I guess X8 too, but
yeah. And when you beat Frost Walrus and Chill Penguin, who are paired together, you can't change the loadout. You gotta fight the next matchup with the weapons you got. So the best approach is to pick Mavericks that you know are gonna be trouble, and go with the weapons that their weaknesses are.
yeah. See, I love that strategy. I like that concept a lot.
Yeah, and you only got 2 lives. So, yeah. I do think it's a great idea, but the execution is kind of shaky.
Yeah, agreed.
First of all, X Challenge proved that I'm not Mega Man God. I'm just a Mega Man peasant.
Okay, well, hey, you know what? I'll get into this, but to be fair, I don't think that a lot of Mega Man skill translates to this.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the challenges here are stupid hard, like Spiral Pegasus and Neon Tiger. That's a toxic combination.
Oh yeah, I hate that one. I really, really hate that one. I started playing this on normal, and I got through it on normal, and it was annoying. But then I was like, you know what? I like punishment. I'm gonna do hard, and I got to that. I got to Sheldon stage, Shield Sheldon, and what is it, Kraken?
Wall Kraken, yeah.
Yeah. Volt Kraken and Shield Sheldon, and that just made me rage quit because it's not. I don't know. The technique you have to employ in these challenges is kind of cheesy. It's not the same kind of pattern adjustment as the actual X games are, so it almost feels like an indie game in a way. Like it just doesn't feel good, and there's too much stuff on screen. The sprites look janky. There's like an inconsistency of aesthetic. I remember, Wesley, you said something about like how you wish Mega Man would scale or X would scale to each relative challenge. So like if you fought 2 bosses from X3, you'd look like X from X3.
Yeah, definitely. Although it would be pretty neat to see the ultimate armor in SNES style.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing that I would have really wanted from this mode. And I was kind of stoked about it at first because actually, by the way, one of my friends like had this idea for this mode. He's like, we were playing through the Zero series, and he was like, "Man, it'd be so awesome if every boss was like that boss, or if there was a mode that had features like that boss in 0-3 where you fight 2 dudes at once, or maybe it's 0-2." He's like, "So I really want to fight multiple Mavericks at once. That'd be awesome." And this is like years ago, so I think Capcom infiltrated my messages and saw this and just stole his idea.
Wish fulfillment. I like that.
Right? Like, just hey, man, they're listening. They're listening.
They're watching you. The big brother
Always.
is watching you. Always watching you.
I mean, if a company is gonna watch me, I guess I'm okay with it being Capcom because maybe they'll like take some insight from their play or their fan base again. But I don't know, wishful thinking. You know what? I like taking pot shots at Capcom more than X6 likes taking pot shots at the player. But yeah, I mean, like as a whole, I don't think that the X challenge mode is super fulfilling. I don't think it's a good reason to pick up the game if you're looking for something new. It's a fun little aside, but like, I don't know. I like the concept of a loadout, but I would have vastly preferred the Legacy Collection options, which the original or the classic Mega Man Legacy Collection options, which were like there were stage remixes, which I hated, but then there's also boss fights that was just the boss fight, or like maybe then there's like a Buster only version of the boss fight. So I think I would have much preferred that to this mode. I would have rather been able to fight Kaiser Sigma anytime I want and just go to like a list of bosses to fight and fight him. There's no mode like that, and that's one of the things I think is really missing from this collection. Because and as somebody who's like I try to speed run these games when I can, and I try to get as good as I can at them, and like little utilities and tools like that really help improve your skill, even if you are playing these casually. Like if I were to recommend X6 for somebody and it had an option to play as Gate or to play against Gate, I'd be like, learn this fight before you go into this game because this is gonna block you for a little bit. So I'm really curious as to why that wasn't in this collection.
Yeah, considering Legacy Collection 2 had that, that was in-house, maybe they didn't bother doing it, considering that the X1, X2, and X3 are emulated. But, here's my stance on X Challenge. Neat idea, shaky execution, missed opportunities everywhere. First of all, I don't think they should have advertised that it has the story mode. It has a story mode.
It doesn't. There's no story. It's like weird blurbs. There's like little blurbs that like try to tie the Mavericks, try to give you a reason as to why you're fighting the Mavericks. Like Spiral, Pegasus, and Neon Tiger have both invaded the air zone. Now you must take them both on at once. It's like almost like Burger King or McDonald's Happy Meal descriptions for these things.
Yeah, they're very formulaic. They kind of try to add character to whatever the navigator is trying to contact X.
Yeah, I'll give them that.
Yeah, it's very superficial stuff. It's not even worthy plotline of an actual numbered title.
Right.
Though I do find it cute that there was some attempt into it, but they didn't go all out into it. It's just two cutscenes. First of all, is just pretty much the introduction to the X Challenge, which features silhouettes of the Mavericks on the fiery background, with the text telling you that they're back for some reason. So you gotta watch out, X.
Oh, it looks like an arcade, like a cheap arcade intro. Actually, the intro to the X Challenge mode.
Yeah, exactly that.
But I have to not just be a negative Nancy, and I really love some of the presentation. I love how the menus look. That's the aesthetic that I want for X9. I want that like futuristic, crisp menu style. Because if you look at the later X games, all the menus, like they tried a bunch of different things and most of them didn't work. But like the X Challenge menus look good. The sound effects are crisp. Everything, like it has the trappings of something that would be really fun, but it doesn't end up that way.
Yeah, right. I think the overall presentation of both the X Challenge as well as the collections themselves is pretty top-notch. Even more so than Legacy Collection 2, which just repurposed the artwork from Mega Man 8.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, which is fine. I mean, even the original collections, both Anniversary and X, had a lot of reuse of assets for the menus. But like this brings me to one of the biggest issues that I have with these games is that like or this whole collection in general is the illusion that like everything is copacetic. Like look at these pristine menus and we have all the mainline titles here. Oh, but wait, there's input lag and there's like the version differences that actually matter aren't actually in in these games. And like X Challenge mode is here, but it's kind of a letdown. Like it's advertised as almost like a fighting game mode,
And then we
and it
get some
looks great.
shitty filters bundled in.
Well, you got the filter, yeah. That's a whole other can of worms right there. So it's like I think X Challenge mode is like the perfect microcosm of the issues I have with this collection in general.
Yeah, because unfortunately, just as we stated, the transition wasn't perfect. First and foremost, the screen ratio isn't even, which is more apparent for the SNES titles because their original
Right.
screen resolution was 8:7 and not 4:3, which if you stretch it to scale it just at the edges, you're gonna notice that the picture isn't even. There is an original screen resolution mode, but it makes the image so small.
Right.
And there's the
Right.
widescreen option, which is just pure ass. I do not recommend.
Ooh, it's bad.
Yeah, but they also bundled in filters to kind of modernize the look. There's the obligatory CRT screen filter, which is really underwhelming. It just adds lines and some random noise, and that's it. It's not
Yeah.
as involved as the Blarg's NTSC filters in RetroArch. And then there's the smoothing filter, which is,
That's like the one that's on by default, right?
yeah, it's on by default, and it tries to smooth the image so that the artwork on the characters kind of looks faithful to the original concept art, so that the X doesn't have the monkey face going on in the Super Nintendo versions. But it adds a lot more artifacts just because you melted pixels together. Like, it only works very selectively to improve the image, but it just doesn't
Right.
work all throughout. And what's even weirder is that it has gross vibrating pixels everywhere that you look,
Yeah.
with the most blatant example being the health bars, specifically the Axis symbol. That has some jumping, vibrating pixels, and that's just I never seen before in any emulator before this. It looks very off-putting. You have the option to play with raw pixels, of course, but that just makes the image very rough around the edges. It's not like smoothing that
Yeah,
you get
it
if you...
looks it looks kind of like if you were to plug like a Super Nintendo into an HD TV and don't mess with the resolution. It just looks blocky.
super blocky. Although, wouldn't be as crisp if you just plug it in through the Composite.
Right. Yeah.
Composite. This is like if you put it through the FrameMeister without messing with any settings to make the image slightly more round up.
You know what? I really don't think the smoothing filter looks that bad. I actually think it looks pretty good, and it's nice that it's there. And I think a lot of people would praise the collection for having that. But you know what though? Like if you play Mega Man X on the Wii U Virtual Console, the Wii U Virtual Console actually has a built-in smoothing tool. Smoothing? That's not a word. Smoothing tool? I don't know. But it has a built-in option for that. So it's like, I don't know, are we kind of doing the bare minimum here or whatever? But either way, it makes X4 look like amazing. Mostly.
Debatable. I don't find it's a necessary improvement for the PlayStation games either. There's a lot of areas in the PlayStation games and in X3 where they do cross hatching so that they simulate more color shades than the platform actually has, and that doesn't end up looking good. It just doesn't. It looks like there's a lot of nipples in there.
Nipple. Everyone has nipples.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that as a whole, there's not a lot of filter options, but I mean, I don't know. They get the job done, and there's wallpapers too. that some of them you have to unlock, and as a whole, a lot of the wallpapers have sort of the concept art, or not concept art, but just like I guess the official illustrations of some of the games, but they're kind of spread out really weird across your screen on the side. So it's kind of jarring looking, and I don't know. I don't really like the wallpapers very much.
Their quality is all over the place. So Legacy Collection 1 kind of suffered from the same thing. These wallpapers are loud. They have very loud colors, which is really distracting if you're playing an old game with these wallpapers on. And
Oh yeah, especially because of the color fidelity of it too.
yeah, a Legacy Collection 2 of the classic Mega Man, I should stress, actually had them right. They were varied and they had certain composition theme going on, so they were consistent. But most important of all, they had subdued color schemes, which means they weren't busy. So they weren't loud with their colors. So they made for some great background wallpaper to fill out the rest of the screen. And that was great. I don't understand why they didn't do that for the X games. X1 has this very garish yellow. I think relatively X2's wallpaper is pretty okay.
It's the best one, I think.
Yeah, it's the best one. X3 is some DeviantArt garbage. Here's some Vile Mark II and Dr. Doppler in front of the lightning fog background.
We need lightning because that's edgy and badass. But the worst one I think is there's two unlockable ones. One is like the original Mega Man X like demo intro that plays. I think it looks kind of cool, but it's just unnecessary. And the second one is heart tanks, sub tanks, and like power capsules in this disgusting like cyan light blue background, and it looks like a fucking GeoCities site. Like I have to like be as vulgar as possible because it's visually vulgar, and it honestly looks like, I don't know, somebody's Angel Fire fan site from 1998.
Yeah, usually Capcom are very competent about appealing art styles. So this is not a good showing, and I do find it kind of cheap that it's only just the Super Nintendo pickups. And
I just want to bring up MVCI. After you said that, I was like competent about art styles. All of a sudden, I see like Captain America's face in MVCI just flash on my screen.
Okay, mostly.
Sorry, I just have war flashbacks of that like horrendous dumpster fire of an aesthetic.
Yeah, mostly. And the XLC2's wallpapers aren't better, really. For X5 and X6, they're okay-ish. X7 is garbage, too. It's just red on the left side and Axel, X, and Zero on the right side. And it looks like something of the same quality that X7 dev team would come up with.
Right, yeah, it's consistent at least.
And X8 is also really distracting, only because Lumine keeps watching me suffering through some of the annoying sections, like completing Bamboo Pandemonium stage with the right armor intact, and he keeps judging me with his...
I failed on that like at least 5 to 8 times, but when I just played through X8 again yesterday, and when I did it, when I played through it that time, I pretty much got it, no problem. But yeah. I didn't know. Can you bring that? This is a tangent. But I'm just curious, and I need to know. Can you bring that right armor into Bamboo Pandemonium's boss fight room? Okay, that's all I needed to know.
Yes, just like Magma Dragoon, you can bring it to his boss battle room, but
oh yeah,
I never managed to do that.
Really, for Magma Dragoon?
Bamboo Pandemonium.
Oh yeah, it's a pain. So like as soon as I get that last rare metal on that stage, I just go fight the boss and abandon that piece of crap. But the music for it is sick. Anyway, sorry. Yeah. I just want to say one last thing about the wallpapers. And the only thing I really liked is how X1 through 3, you could kind of see the evolution of the art style a little bit. Because in the first Mega Man X, that was created around the time that Mega Man 5 for NES was in production. And I believe 5 for NES came out a couple months before X dropped. So you see a lot of the Inafune, like almost little kid look of Mega Man and Zero in the X artwork that like gradually became a little bit more anime. So I think it's kind of cool to see that progression in a way. I just wish that the wallpapers weren't as garish. But that brings me to the topic of input lag, actually.
Actually, before we touch that, I also want to point out that in Legacy Collection 2 of the classic Mega Man, I should stress that again, each game had about 4 different wallpapers.
That's right. Yeah, this one only has like 6 total, right?
You don't have varied wallpapers for each game. You just have one for each game. And what's weird is that you can have X2's wallpaper while playing X4. I don't understand why anyone would want that, but okay.
To remind you of the fact that the X Hunters existed once and don't anymore. And Dr. Kane. Remember Dr. Kane. But yeah, I mean, like, again, like, these wallpapers actually are one of the causes, I believe, of input lag, right? In these collections?
I don't think so. I think the filters are.
The filter. Okay, so just to give an anecdote here, and I know correlation does not prove causation, but we're going to dive pretty deep into the subject in a second, but like in the subject of input lag, I definitely noticed it, and I felt like it was less apparent when I turned on or when I turned off the filter and the wallpaper. That might be like a placebo effect, but has it actually been proven that these things do cause the latency in any way?
I don't think the wallpapers are. I think it's the filters and the screen ratio.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about the screen ratio. Okay.
Right, so yeah, there is about 7 milliseconds of lag, and it kind of varies between each games. With X8 being the quickest to respawn.
Yeah. 7 milliseconds and 5 to 8 frames of lag, depending on the version and all that.
Actually, no, it's 7 frames and 15 milliseconds, to be precise.
There you go. Okay, gotcha.
You only notice input lag casually if it goes over 20 milliseconds, approximately. Mm-hmm. It's not a scientifically proven number, but it's just a point of reference. I replayed these games, 1 through 6, on an emulator before the collections were released. And when I was playing the collections, I didn't really notice any input lag, at least on my PS4. I played through them on PS4. And
real quick, like there's a lot of reasons, there's a lot of causes to input lag on an emulator too. So it's like it's difficult to perfectly make lab-like conditions for testing this, I'll just say.
True, I don't really have an original Super Nintendo, so I can't really measure on that. But yeah, even if there is input lag, it wasn't really garish to the point where I would just say, this collection sucks, and refund it. No.
Yeah, same here. No, you definitely notice it. Like, I could speedrun Mega Man X1, and I could beat, like, pretty much every other title in the collection pretty quickly. It's not a humble brag, it has relevance, I swear. So, like, there's a lot of jumps in X1, for example, like getting the Heart Tank and Boomer Quanger stage, which RIP as to why he wasn't in the X Challenge. But anyway, getting that Heart Tank without the shotgun ice or the boomerang cutter, you can actually jump and get it. But it's like a 2-frame window, 3-frame window. So when you have up to 8 frames of lag, that's hugely noticeable. And even, I know... Caleb Hart, 42. He's one of the top Mega Man X speedrunners. He's a huge YouTube personality, blah, blah, blah.
Ooh, he's definitely huge, with huge guts.
Huge guy. Yeah, he's got his own opinions on this, and I pretty much share them. And it's like, Yeah, you notice it if you're a speedrunner, but you don't really casually. But it also makes me think that like, this is a series that attracts a lot of speedrunning, and you want you want this modern iteration of the games to be the ideal speedrunning game because more people will buy it that way. So it kind of, I mean, granted, probably doesn't really affect sales hugely, but it builds a good like repertoire for Capcom to be able to back up. So it kind of makes me wonder why they didn't do more work to alleviate this input lag. And Wesley, do you want to talk about how the VSync affects this too?
Oh man, oh man, the VSync. First of all, while I was playing on PS4 as I was streaming it, X1, X2, and X3 had severe cases of rip and tear when it comes to image quality. Like suddenly the VSync got turned off. It resulted not only in frame drops, but also the image was tearing apart at certain intervals. Like I
Screen
remember,
tearing?
yes, screen tearing
Okay.
everywhere, and it was only noticeable for like 20 seconds, but I definitely remember getting that in Spark Mandrill stage in X1 and
Yeah, that's a big
Blizzard Buffalo stage in X3. I don't remember where I got that in X2.
X2's ending when you kill Virus Sigma. Spoilers: Sigma's the final boss. I don't know if I didn't want to ruin that for anyone.
Who cares? It's always
I think
Sigma.
everyone knows. It's always Sigma. Yeah, and there's also some slowdown too. That I don't know if it's related to the screen tearing in the original games, but my best example of this is in X2 when you fight Surgus, one of the X Hunters in the Super Nintendo version, at least in the cartridge that I have, which I think is the original version. There's a lot of slowdown in that fight. You really notice it, and one of the reasons why I think speedrunning routes don't pick the X Hunters to fight is because of the slowdown in some of the fights. So, but it's huge, but it's completely gone in these XLC versions. Yet a lot of the slowdown is still retained in the games. Like for example, in X1, if you're charging or moving when the bees fall in the intro stage, it actually causes a couple frames of lag, and that's consistent in the XLC. So I'm really curious as to what exactly was changed, or is it just like a feature they added visually that removes or retains this? Is there anything that you can speak to on that?
I just chalked up to an emulator that they used,
Right.
like,
Okay.
which also has the potential for eating your inputs. Okay, so X3
Yes.
still
Yes.
eats your inputs like crazy at certain intervals. However, I also got killed in a very silly fashion in X2 as I was speeding through Virus Sponge's stage and I suddenly fall into spikes. That never
Yeah.
ever
That
happened.
never happened. Yeah, because of input lag affecting the eating of inputs. I did air
Yeah.
quotes that you can't see there.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, but not something that ruins games.
No,
I
no. Makes
I
it frustrating.
didn't run into any other technical difficulties with the games per se. The resync was consistent everywhere else. However, I did dig deep, and by dig deep I mean just watch the Gigaboots video about it. And apparently the best version of the X Legacy Collection to play is on original Xbox One.
Yeah, that's funny. I was gonna bring that up actually.
Not even the Xbox One X. It's Xbox One slash Xbox One S.
Hmm.
Only because Xbox One, the original, has terrible implementation of VSync. So what ends up happening is that it constantly fails, and X Legacy Collection 1 2 run without the VSync turned on, which
Huh.
results in lessened input lag.
Yeah, by far. That's probably the main contributor at this point.
Yeah, and it actually doesn't really paint the programmer's work in the best way possible because
No.
it essentially means that the that the XLCs aren't very well optimized at all.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny that this affects the oldest games the most.
Yeah. However, to shift the conversation a bit from all this negativity to positivity, I do think that X Legacy Collection 2 accomplishes the following. It has the absolute best version of X7. Mind you,
The most polished turd.
yeah, mind you, it doesn't really change the fact that it is still Mega Man X7, but it features reduced load times. In fact, the load times for the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games are considerably reduced.
Oh, they're huge, man. X5's load times on PSX were just ridiculous. At least for my copy. I don't know. I'm sure
Yeah,
that's anecdotal.
yeah, but X7 almost got as long as Sonic 06's load times. It is still the slowest game to load, but the load times were reduced significantly. The X7 and X8 also play in an upscaled resolution, and what's strange and kind of cool is that X7 also features a thing that was kind of half-assedly implemented on PS2. You can play with Japanese voice, and if you want to experience this game, play with Japanese voices. Because seriously, you don't want to burn to the ground.
Oh, honestly, I think the novelty, like, of Mega Man X7, the only thing that's fun about it is how unbelievably bad it is. So, if you look at that game and, like, you look at it the same way you look at X4's voice acting, you kind of appreciate it a little bit, like, in this weird kind of meme way,
I do really enjoy Barry Burden as Red.
Oh yeah, I didn't quite put that together until like somebody on the Discord mentioned it.
Me.
But I see it now.
Yeah. So on the PS2, if you switch to Japanese voices, it only worked for the cutscenes. It never worked anywhere else, so you would still hear Flame Heinhardt scream and burn to the ground everywhere. However, here they actually fixed that, and every single voice acting file is affected. So instead of burn to the ground, you hear Moro, Moro everywhere.
Oh,
so,
God, dude.
so
Another thing about X7, play it on Japanese anyway, because the damage is much more tolerable. Like you output a lot more damage to enemies.
Yeah, for some reason they nerfed the special weapons for the international releases, and I don't understand why. Because they made them really weak ass that way.
Launcher is still overpowered as hell. Or is Explosion? I forgot the name of it.
I think it's Explosion for Axel.
Yeah, I think you're right. So yeah, I mean, there's more than one reason to play the Japanese version of that game.
Yes. They didn't really fix the input lag, which was inherent to the PlayStation 2 version, and of course, upscale the resolution for the 3D graphics. It kind of highlighted the fact that X7 kind of looks like shit even more. I mean,
it looks like Legends mixed with Superman 64. I'll stand by that statement till I die.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It's really disgusting cocktail. I mean, I love Legends, but I think Superman 64 is pure garbage.
It's like they mix the two styles of those games for some reason.
Yeah, I also don't think it does any favors to the outline effect they got for the characters.
No, it looks like it was so drawn. I hate it.
Yeah, the upscaled resolution, hell of a lot better than interlaced screen mode. It might have said progressive scan, but no, X7 ran interlaced and it looked fuzzy as heck, like PlayStation Portable 3000 screen. I hate it. Maybe it looks okay in CRT, but I hate it. But with upscale 3D graphics, unfortunately, they didn't bother upscaling 2D assets much. And what results is pretty much not only really blurry menus and text boxes, but also poorly screwed up Alia on the report screen.
Yeah, and also the compression of the X7 voices it's really, really obvious. And now that modern TVs or whatever displays have much higher quality like speakers, and there's way more options for that, like you really hear how artifacty those sounds. Like listen to how Alia calls you, like, can you hear me, Axel? And it's just like it
Yeah,
sounds like it's in a tin can in the bottom of the ocean.
yeah. There's some compression in there.
And it's not that like that it was added in the XLC. It's just that it's way more noticeable on modern hardware is the problem.
Yeah, I don't think they have the masters for the original files.
Yeah, which that's fine. That's to be expected. Like, but it's still I'm just trying to give you guys reasons to hate X7. I have my own agenda here.
I try to be as neutral as possible, but X7 is just not fun to play.
Too. I tried really hard, and I went after X6 and I was playing through the whole collection. After X6, I was like kind of excited to play X7 because it's definitely a change of form, and I haven't played it since it came out. And I was like really excited to like give it another shot and to. I mean, I wasn't expecting like a wonderful experience, but I was like, maybe I was too harsh on it before. I was a lot more resistant to change as an angsty kid, so maybe I'll be more receptive this time. And no, it is worse to me. I mean, okay, if you put that game on Rookie Hunter mode and you just take it for what it is and laugh at it, it's actually a fun little interlude. But that's the only way.
It's still a chore.
Right. So, again, sorry for the X7 tangent, but we both needed that catharsis. We needed to get it off our chest, right?
Yeah. I also want to touch on X8 a bit. So X8 is not a port of the PC version. It's actually a port of the PlayStation 2 version, which will become most apparent because you don't have the Japanese voice acting option with English subs, which was a feature of the PC version. And second, the UI elements aren't smoothed out. They don't use the high resolution assets that were present in the PC version of X8.
Okay, that's why it looks worse. I was wondering why it did.
Yeah, it's raw pixelated and kind of off-putting to look at. Although it doesn't suffer from the scaling issues the X8 had in PS2, but still, character portraits look really pixelated there.
Mm-hmm. That Alia picture, right? Or is that X7?
X7's Alia picture is just a mess. It's like they tore her picture apart and hastily put together with glue, and it just looks really freaking wrong.
I agree that I think X8 looks better on PC, but the loading times on this one are about the same as on PC. And,
almost instantaneous, which is great.
Yeah, so good. And it looks good. I think X8 actually does look really good. It's apart from the issues that you mentioned, I think it's preserved a lot better than X7 was.
Oh, definitely. I never had any frame drops there. X7 too, but we don't praise that game. And the controls felt extremely fluid, just as always.
Yeah, but by the way, we really want to talk about these games individually on another episode. Because Wesley and I could just go on for hours about this. But I think bringing up these things is really important to how the graphics scale to modernity, and you see these in the XLC. And in a way, I'm kind of glad they didn't add a lot of HD stuff to them, so you could kind of see them in naturality.
For the purpose.
So I appreciate that at least.
Yeah, for the preservation's sake. Unfortunately, the whole preservation thing doesn't hold up when you bring up the fact that there are actually some glaring differences. For example, with very confused priorities too. For example, for some reason, in X8 they fixed the exploits.
Oh, the metal exploit. So you could, those who don't know, in the original X8, you can actually roll back your metal counter, and you have to grind a buttload of metals, which is like ideal for like basically putting your controller on the ground and letting it auto attack this big robot. Um, but like it takes at least a couple hours to farm all the metals if you don't use that exploit. And I know it's an exploit; it shouldn't be there, but it's one of the things. I think you pretty much nailed. You can put this entire collection into one phrase, and it would be confused priorities.
Yeah, pretty much. So they fixed the exploits, which would help speedrunners. This is weird, but they
Right.
didn't bother fixing any other shit that's in X7, X6, and backwards, So there's still slowdown in X1, X2, X3 because they're emulated. There's still slash dash cancel in X4, X5, and X6.
I love that. That's the reason why I like Zero in those games.
Same.
It's really cool, and you can do dash canceling with X in X6, or actually with both X and Zero, just a little different, where you sort of crouch in the middle of a dash and you retain your momentum.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that all that stuff was kept because it's kind of this is the analogy I like to use is wave dashing in Melee, right? Like it wasn't really super intentional, but the advanced techniques that kind of spawn from it and the dynamics that it presents really make the games a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, but I also want to delve just a little bit into the confused priorities bit because it wasn't just fixing the exploits in X8 that got affected. X5 got some pretty interesting changes too. For example, the
Yes.
Guns N' Roses Mavericks now retain their closer to original names. So the Skyver, was it the Skiver? Now
yeah.
became Spiral Pegasus. Easy Glow is now Shining Firefly. That sort of thing. Although
Makes it
Tidal
confusing.
Vale, I will never, ever not think of him as Duff McWhalen. He will always
Duff
be
McWhalen for life, dude.
He will always be Duff McWhalen to me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of them that are better. I think Spiral Pegasus is a really good example of being much better. But you're right. That's one of the weirdest changes. This collection's impetus seems to be retain originality. Don't make everything, try to keep and preserve everything, but then it's like, hey, we're going to change these names, but not fix the egregious translation errors in X6 or even X5.
Right. So I wanted to get on that. In X5, they actually bothered changing the script, not just considering the Maverick names, but also fixing the infamous Octopardo. Basically, when X approaches Volt Kraken, he said that he was so sorry about Octopardo, leaving me wondering who the hell is Octopardo. He was actually talking about Launch Octopus, because Launch Octopus and Volt Kraken were buddies before X1 happened, and so they rectified that. However, the changes in the script are very selective and at confusing intervals. For example, if you play and beat the intro stage of X5, you gotta notice that the first line that Zero says about the Sigma virus leaking out is different between the PlayStation 1 and the X Legacy Collection 2 version. I don't have the exact quote on hand with me right now, but it is different. But it is the only major change in the script that I got. Maybe some of the alias annoying calls also got fixed pronunciations, grammar, and that sort of stuff. So they had the capacity of changing the script, and yet they left X6 as it is with its god-awful localization. So there is no one is left to fight. And and what's the other blaring example of X6's atrocious localization?
I hit myself while I repaired myself.
No, that actually sounds a little bit adequate, even kind of silly.
It's bad, but it's,
Oh, I know. When Dr. Light says to Zero, I'm glad to see you again.
Oh, yeah. Boy,
I will never die. Is exactly what Zero falls with. Yeah,
Right.
X6's script is untouched, and unfortunately, Sensuzan, which is like one of my most despised things about Zero in X6, is never fixed. It's never remapped to something more sensible than attack
Oh yeah.
and up in midair, which kills me in Infinity stage. Oh, by the way, they didn't.
But it also like lets you do that invincibility glitch.
Yeah, but they also didn't bother changing the names of the Mavericks in X6, so the Metal Shark player is still the player.
Yeah, but by the way, what's the actual translation? It's supposed to be like Metal Shark Prayer, so he's supposed to be like a robot necromancer, essentially.
Robot Priest, yeah, kind of
Robot
like that.
priest. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it makes you wonder. You know, you had the capacity to change these things. Why not? And again, this is the thing I'm just going to constantly keep bringing up. If you do change these things and you want to preserve originality, give us that option. You clearly care about giving us options, but like, I don't know, you're not fixing these things that like would really make the games a lot better. You know, like I just don't understand. I would really like love to see why
yep,
Capcom did this. I want like a concrete reason. And one of the things that we had for this podcast is like we have one of our friends in the Discord here has actually went through and retranslated all the scripts for X4 through 8.
yep.
And maybe in a future episode we can talk a little bit about what the differences are and that kind of thing. But I mean, for now, like these are pretty obvious things that for better or worse. I'll bring up X4's novelty. The voice acting is awful, but it's like charmingly bad in this B movie quality that it has. And I think they thought, or the developers thought, that these terrible translations is part of X6's quality or novelty, but it's not really. It's just bad. I don't know.
Right, and considering the sob story that is the X collection for the PS2 and GameCube, that one was supposed to have the definitive versions of X4, X5, and X6. So the original intention there was to have them redubbed with the Ocean Group dub, which are the same guys that did phenomenal job at X8, Maverick Hunter X, Command Mission.
Okay.
And there is evidence of X4 having slightly worse audio quality because they spliced back the original audio in.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah, yeah.
Why?
X4 was supposed to be redubbed. The text was supposed to be corrected so X6 doesn't have horrible localization anymore. But Keiji Inafune said, no, you know what? That would make the collections way too definitive. No. Let me handle that with Maverick Hunter X series.
Yeah, which, by the way, if you guys don't know, that series was essentially like a visual, and it kept the game mostly faithful, but it's like a remake of Mega Man X1. And it does a lot of different things. It adds like different playable characters, adds a couple, like it changes where some of the armor capsules are. And that was supposed to be an entire series in and of itself. They were supposed to be at least the Super Nintendo games remade in that style, but didn't sell super well, and they kind of scrapped it, honestly.
Yeah,
R.I.P. X2.
yeah, it's supposed to be reimagining of the series with a different script.
And
And
more consistent, too,
yeah,
right?
and I think it's kind of interesting that they put Day of Sigma in the collection, even though it kind of contradicts the backstory for Sigma and Zero you get in X4. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to get too into the weird canon stuff or like plot minutia, but yeah, there's things like that that just it makes it a little jarring. I mean, even on a casual way, casual viewing, you could kind of notice some of the discrepancies.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'm kind of mad that these things weren't implemented, or if I'm glad that these original games or these games kept their originality. So I just kind of keep going back and forth here.
Yeah. They had the opportunity to change them, improve them, but no, they decided to package them as is, unfortunately. However, there are some interesting differences for the X4's opening and some of the cutscenes.
Oh yeah, I wanted to mention that like the censoring.
They kind of censored it. Basically, that bit with Jarl saluting his troops, that kind of looks like a
Not
Hail Nazis thing. That was removed, and to keep it in sync, some of the scenes were slowed down, and it's very obvious that they did that. They also reduced. They kind of dimmed the scenes with bright lights to accommodate to epileptics, which doesn't look right to me.
It doesn't look right. It like almost adds a CRT filter to it. You know,
Yeah, I also
it's funny looking.
yeah, I also think they kind of interpolated the cutscenes. I'm not sure, but they seem to be slightly blurrier than they originally were.
Yeah, it almost looks like they recorded it on a VHS and then took that VHS and made it digital. There's a lot of compression there that almost didn't exist, or it was added. So it's difficult to say exactly what was done or how it was done, rather.
Yeah, but then again, only hardcore X4 fanatics would be triggered by it.
Yeah, I mean, the Nazi salute thing, it's fine. It doesn't, it's like a half a second scene, not even. It's just a shot. And it's like,
although you know what, it's actually also censored in the Japanese opening.
is it?
Yes,
Like
because
the original Japanese opening or just the XLC opening?
XLC Japanese opening, because
okay.
Because of the rating board in Japan, 0, that actually accounts historical things,
Right.
Like the reason why in Persona 2 Innocent Sin for the PSP, Hitler became Führer, which sports a coat and sunglasses.
Man, that really changes it. I have no idea who he's trying to be now.
Yeah, yeah. I
It's
think
almost condescending.
Yeah, yeah. I think they weren't going to risk 0 raising age ratings on Japanese sites, so they went with the safe route there.
Right, and I'm not one of those people who really cares too much about that kind of thing.
I
know
never
there's a
even
big
made the
stink about that.
parallels. I
Right,
never even
yeah.
made the parallels.
I'm not like complaining about them censoring the content because I can understand that to some extent. As long as the gameplay isn't really affected, that's do what you gotta do. But yeah, I guess I don't want to go on to too much of a soapbox with that. So, is there anything that we haven't covered before we start talking about trophies?
Hunter medals.
Hunter- yeah.
Although since PlayStation's kind of ubiquitous now, no thanks to Microsoft kind of mucking it up with Xbox One, let's refer to them as trophies.
Okay, yeah, and this probably won't be consistent. So keep in mind that medals, trophies, and achievements I'll probably use interchangeably because I don't know, I can't focus on that.
Right. So originally, my stance on achievements and trophies was, wow, these things are so freaking pointless. But with X Legacy Collection 1 and 2 having their trophy lists leaked beforehand, and I got a good look at them, and I was like, you know what? I'll actually get platinum for that.
Oh,
And
man, you were serious.
yes, and unfortunately, doing that kind of awakened the trophy horde in me because now suddenly I have the urge to get platinums. I have 9 platinums now. I'm aiming for 10th with my Dead Space 2 hardcore playthrough, and so we went in. I played the game. I started X Legacy Collection 1 right as it was released, in Europe at least. And it took me 15 hours to get the plat. And as a humble brag, if you go to the psnprofiles.com and look up the leaderboards for the X Legacy Collection 1, you got to notice that there's Ukrainian with Sly Cooper, Avatar, called Wesley Crowan, who's the 6th person to get the plat. That's me. That's me.
Gonna one up you. I was the fourth.
Ooh, you're the fourth.
I
Okay.
was the fourth. Yeah. So I started playing this. I was gonna play it at midnight because I wanted to get the plateau. I didn't read the trophies beforehand though. I played X1 through 4 enough to where I felt confident I could do it pretty quick.
Right. X Legacy Collection 2 took a lot longer, like
Yeah,
10
me too.
days, mostly because of X7 and X8. I'll get into that a little bit. But I'm the 16th person there to get the plat.
Oh, I didn't look. I think I got that. So I think I got that about 6 days after it came out. When I started playing X7, I had to stop for a little bit. Like it was just too painful, and I just had a bunch of stuff going on. Like my girlfriend came in when I was playing through it, and I was like looking pissed and irate and just like sweating with rage at it. She just like looks at the game and looks at me and is like, "You're not having fun anymore." My only option or my only response was, I haven't had fun in a long time.
Oof.
So X Collection 2 did me a little dirty with that. But I think I was, by the time I got the platinum, less than 1% of people had it.
Yeah, I think it was 1.8% for XLC1. For XLC2, it was like 1.4%, which
Yeah,
is interesting.
And as a whole, like it took me about 8 hours to get the plat, and that's because one of the reasons for that actually is because I did X3 without any upgrades. Because I don't know
Why?
I kind of A, wanted to, and B, I thought the hyperchip meant any of the white armor, and I thought that the trophies were too easy, so I was like, there's no way, this has to be probably pretty hard. So I did. It actually wasn't bad, but I've played through X3 enough times to where I kind of know it pretty well, so it really isn't that bad. The hardest thing is probably some of the Doppler stages. I don't think, and the first form of Kaiser Sigma. Holy shit, that's hard without any upgrades.
Ooh, he
Kaiser
just
Sigma is
barrages
easy,
you with
but
a lot of shit.
Yeah, dude, it's like the fireballs are hard to dodge. It's a weird pattern to get used to. But so that took me a little while. That took me about probably an hour and a half to beat, like the whole game, maybe 2 hours to beat that. And it requires you to beat the game twice. I didn't think that you could use passwords to circumvent some of that stuff. So it took me a little bit longer than needed. So I don't know, about 8 hours to do that. I think anywhere from 7 to 15 hours is probably pretty normal for that platinum for XLC 1.
Right. I kind of want to go over the trophies though, because they're very generous trophies, but they could have been worded a lot better.
Yes, some of them this is the famous example, right? So for X7, there was what I thought was a trophy that was power up X axle and 0 to full. So I was like, oh god, that requires 3 playthroughs of this totally abysmal game, and I did it, because I'm sick, and I was like, why isn't the trophy popping? Is something bugged? What's going on? I looked up online and blah blah blah. It was on the Discord. Does anyone else have this issue? And then, I was struck with a miraculous bit of reading comprehension, and it turns out that was the trophy for X8, and Wesley did the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I played 2.5 playthroughs to get everyone powered up. I was like, shit.
Sorry, yeah, 2.5, not 3. I'm sorry, but with X7, more than one playthrough is enough.
Yeah, but I do think it's kind of our fault, reading
It's our
comprehension
fault.
and all.
100%.
Yeah.
We got tunnel vision.
Yeah. Right. Here's some of the trophies that kind of pissed me off. First of all, when the trophy list leaked, there were trophies like Reconnaissance Complete, view 20 images across all 4 titles, then change the wallpaper to the secret image, and audio signal incoming, listen to 10 tracks for long enough with the music player, and then listen to the secret track. And I was like, at first, when I started streaming, the first thing I did, in hopes for the X9 teaser image or soundtrack, is to just mess around in the gallery, listen to the tracks, look at the soundtracks, all that jazz. I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. Turns out, and this is something that these trophies admit, is that you actually have to beat X Challenge. Now,
Yeah, to get that secret track, right? Yeah, because you don't know how to get it.
yeah, in order to get the secret track, you have to beat the X Challenge. It's very doable on easy, kind of boring.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, yeah, you can get these trophies on easy for X Challenge for those who haven't done it yet.
Yeah, yeah, which makes this a breeze. And so, and even then, after you unlock the track, you still have to listen to 10 random tracks. This would have been so much more comprehensive if it actually said the secret track by beating the X challenge, but it doesn't. It's confusing. Same thing with same thing with the Reconnaissance Complete, although that requires you to get 50% of the hunter medals / trophies before you get the pop-up saying that you unlock the special secret wallpaper, which is pretty much
right. And you have to go into the actual medal screen to even see that.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like, okay, all these are very real problems, and I agree. But these are kind of general trophy hunter-related issues for the most part. But there's a couple trophies that are annoying. Like, they're just straight up annoying. Like, listen to all of Alias calls in X7. That one is the worst. Getting all the Mavericks in X7 is probably the hardest achievement in the entire game. Or medal, trophy, whatever. That one sucks. And then what's another really terrible one?
The hardest is probably the one in X2.
Oh, the Magna Centipede one, where you have to avoid the searchlights?
Yeah, that actually proved to be a little bit harder than expected.
Yeah, I find that one easy, but I knew how to do that from playing it when I was a kid. Like, I probably played X2 the most casually.
Right. In X2, it was pretty... X Legacy Collection 2, it was pretty much getting all 128 Reploids alive.
Yeah, that's what I said too. That one sucks.
Because you constantly have to redo the entire stage all over if a Reploid dies. Unless you, kill yourself and perform a save so that you at least save the amount of Reploids that you save, but that is a tedious process and a half. But the other hard trophy that I found is powering everyone to 100%. Because...
Oh, in X8?
In X8, yes. Because not only you have to find pretty much everything, you also have to grind a lot of medals. And if you're not doing multiple playthroughs, you're gonna grind a lot. You're gonna have to waste a lot of time to grind for medals in Earthrock Trilobite stage.
And that's the thing. That's my biggest issue with X8 is that I think that just getting the rare medals should have been enough. But unfortunately, no. You have to grind for the currency too. That one it's not great, but it's just a time-consuming trophy. But then there were really cool ones that really pay homage to the game's little Easter eggs, like cutting wire sponge in half, or what's another one like that? Like, there should have been one for cutting off. No, there is one for cutting off Flame Mammoth's trunk, but there isn't one for cutting off Octopus's arms. So, it's a little inconsistent with that. But then there's some really cool ones like beat X5's Zero Stage 1 without using Darkhold, which requires almost
godlike reflexes.
Yeah. Or just there's ways to kind of cheese it.
That's right. I forgot. In X, there is a trophy in X5 to basically destroy the colony with the Enigma cannon.
Oh, RNG dependent.
That is purely RNG.
Yeah, 100%. I got it the first time because I was lucky, but I mean that doesn't.
How?
I prayed,
That took me 6 hours. Not not in-game hours, 6 hours of wasted time in X5, which is
Ooh,
which is
yeah,
just
because you can't manipulate, you can't reset it. You have to manipulate the RNG.
yeah. So basically, the way I was going, I was wasting hours so that I could do another trophy regarding the collecting 8 special parts. So each time I was wasting time, and before saving, no, right after saving, I would launch the Enigma. It would fail. It failed about 6 to 8 times. I don't recall exactly how many right now, but it took a while. The RNG is set when you see the results screen. You can't reload the save like in PlayStation 2 GameCube collection version. So you have to pretty much just keep beating stages or wasting time and
Right.
hope
And it's just very
you're
annoying.
lucky. However, another ass trophy is pretty much the one that requires you to get all 8 parts. If you don't know how X5 works, it really sucks because you have to intentionally waste 6 hours.
It's really obtuse. It's obtuse and stupid. Like it's never explained to you. It's not a matter of challenge. It's just obtuse. Like it's
It
like
requires
almost
you to
pretentious.
know X5 intimately.
Right. And not even like on a mechanic level, like a skill-based execution level. Ooh, this is how I go on a rant about X5, but go on.
Yeah. What I find weird is that X6's trophies aren't really bad. At worst, it's just the grind.
Right, and it's like self-aware because I feel like they purposely made a trophy like fall in a pit in X6 with rookie hunter mode. We know this game is hard. We're cutting you some slack, boy.
Oh, but we gotta compensate that with X7's Reploid trophy.
Yeah, no, that's just unfair, and it's so annoying because you have to restart the level if you fail. It's like a lot of it's rote memorization because you have to like know where some Reploids spawn or else they get blasted. But this hopefully ties up maybe some of the concepts of the trophies. But all in all, there's an easy way to either cheese or circumvent a lot of the difficulties of these trophies. Like,
Right. You can actually get almost all of them in Rookie Hunter mode,
yeah, the
especially
only
in
ones.
replay playthroughs. The only trophies that you don't unlock are those that pretty much state that you can get them in Rookie Hunter mode, and they're the game completion trophies.
Which I think, again, back to this, is that I think Capcom is using that to track progress. How many people are using Rookie Hunter mode to beat the game? You know, how many people have earned the trophies that only require it or that exclude you from getting it. Yeah, there's like a whole lot of things that are there, I think, almost to track progress. So, Eddie, what's a trophy you would have wanted?
A trophy that I would have wanted. The sadist in me wants Buster only, Naked
too.
X only, X6.
Oh, dude, I did it. I did that actually, and it was.
Why?
I told you about this. Yeah, I don't know why. I just like got this masochistic urge to beat that, and it was. Oh god, it was very painful. I got the health power ups, or at least some of them, but it was brutal. And see, that's what I want too. I wanted a Buster only trophy, because that's to me, and again maybe I'm encroaching elitist territory, is I think that trophies should be something that you really have to put a lot of effort in. It should be a mix of like Easter eggs, very difficult ones, and like things that are just like beat the story, ones that are kind of just gimmies. But there really isn't a lot of like actual difficult trophies in this game compared to say Mega Man 9 or 10, which I guess were achievements because I don't think that the PlayStation versions had trophies. But like one of
Only
the
Mega Man 10 for PS3 has trophies.
okay, yeah, like one of the trophies for Mega Man 10 is a Mr. Perfect run, so no damage, which that's kind of what led me down the path of speedrunning, to be honest. I don't know. I feel like these games should have that kind of thing. I mean, one of the big design elements of Mega Man is like pattern recognition and a little bit of trial and error, but like mostly pattern recognition. And that really is put to the test with Buster only because you don't have ways to work around or circumvent boss abilities that are really hard to dodge and so on and so forth. So to me, I really wish there was something like Buster only. Mr. Perfect runs for X Games. No, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of designed to take pot shots at you. I understand. But I think a Buster only trophy would have been fine. And it doesn't have to be a specific game. It could have just been beat one game, non-rookie hunter mode, in the respective collection with Buster only.
Yeah. So, when it comes to me, I do think that trophies should be, and achievements for that matter, it should be something that you're proud of, something that makes you accomplished. Like,
Right.
like there's a $1 game on PlayStation Network for PS4 and PS Vita, which is pretty much nothing but dressing mayo for 30 minutes. and that's a platinum trophy too.
Yikes.
And you stack it up because it doesn't have a shared trophy list. You can stack up two platinum trophies by buying the shitty game for both Vita and PS4.
Well, wait, this actually brings up an important point. Do you think that the XLC trophies were designed to be relatively accessible to increase sales or marketing of the games?
Oh, definitely. I also like to think that the platinums are there, just planned there by Capcom to acknowledge that yes, we goofed up with Legacy Collection 1 and 2.
And we added this to Gimme Trophy, the Plats. Gimme Plats.
Yeah, because Legacy Collection 1 had not only didn't have a platinum trophy, it had reduced trophy list compared to the achievements.
Ridiculous trophies.
Yeah. Legacy Collection 2 is the same way.
I don't think 2 is as bad, though, personally.
Yeah, but those this is a topic of its own that I don't know if I can cover sufficiently on this podcast. But let's just say I was not happy to see the trophy list for those and how lacking it is. Although it's not as offensive as Yu-Gi-Oh! Path of the Duelist, which is pretty much only like 15 bronze trophies and nothing else.
Yikes. Yeah.
And that's a retail game.
Yeah, I think that they definitely had very purposeful intentions by making the platinums relatively accessible, because I feel like the right difficulty where you can't just close your eyes and beat it. It's more than just playing through the games, but also the workarounds for the trophies I think were intentional because they want to appeal to people who maybe even casually will like these games because it helps build the foundation and possibilities for X8.
Oh, definitely.
Or X9, I'm sorry, and Mega Man 11 too. Is there anything? This is a good segue into Mega Man X9. But is there anything that we want to talk about before we tackle this subject?
Personally, the only thing I can say about X9 or whatever the X game is coming up after Mega Man 11, which unlike a couple of years ago, I actually don't have any doubts that will happen.
Yeah, it seems more likely, for sure.
From X9, I don't even care if it's going to be either a retro throwback, which is less likely, than going for the same 3D art style as Mega Man 11. I just want X9 to be a really good Mega Man X game. Maybe go to basics just like X4, but still retain a very satisfying amount of challenge with a difficulty curve that appeals to both newcomers and the hardcore fans. And I don't really care about plots too much, but I don't even expect them to follow the cliffhanger of X8. I again just want X9 to be a really good game whenever it comes out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that X8 kind of sows the seeds for a really good, interesting plot, for sure. It leaves it brings up one of the biggest themes of the X series, and that's free will. Because the whole idea of Reploids is free will. Light made X which eventually led to Reploids because he wanted to have a robot make its own choices. So when Lumine oops, when Lumine comes into the picture and he's like, "Hey, actually, we didn't go Maverick. These are just these robots' own choices to either be bad or be good." It brings up a really interesting dilemma. And I think that has a lot of potentiality for a sequel. There's a lot of hints with Axel like being corrupted or kind of, there's some like ambiguous visual stuff that was definitely intentional at the end of 8. So there's a lot of threads they could follow. But I think more importantly, the game just needs to have a solid story or a solid gameplay, because there's all sorts of wacky inconsistencies in the X series in terms of storytelling and what have you. So I feel like if they were to bog themselves down with like canon or like that kind of thing, I think that it would really affect the development of X9.
Right. I don't really necessarily ask a bridge game between the X and Zero series, with the Elf Wars. I just want whatever the subject they got for. I want them to tackle it tastefully, and without having it being so prominent in my face. It gets over the gameplay.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree totally. And I'm really curious as to see what style they choose for X9, whether it be the more like open-ended, like almost RPG elements of X5 through X8, or it be more the straightforward X1 through X4 style, which to me, I think that is the best style that the series. I think X4 is a perfect culmination of all the mechanics and open-endedness that the series needs, because I think as X5 and X8 started to pile more and more mechanics, it really ruined what I think is the heart and essence of Mega Man and its simplicity. Like,
yeah, right.
Yeah, and I know that's subjective, but I'm fine with things like the rare metals because in X8, because those really contribute a lot to exploring the stages. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't want a ton of backtracking like X5. I want, like, to me, a perfect playthrough is one backtrack, which is what you could do in X4, even X3 if you're smart about it. X4 and X3, X2, X1. X1's only real backtrack is the Chill Penguin. X2
With Fire Wave.
Right. I don't think X2 actually has a backtrack. You can use clever game mechanics to go through the whole thing.
Well, Bubble Crab.
No, you can neon jump that.
Really?
Yeah, you don't need. It's hard, but at least I struggle with it. But you could actually even get the arm upgrade in Wheelgator stage without the strike chain.
Yeah.
So there's ways to, but either way, the design impetus shouldn't be around using those mechanics to reduce backtracking or whatever. So I don't know. To me, I like the idea of a heart tank in each stage, 4 armor pieces, and maybe 1 or 2 extra secrets, and that's as far as I go. How about you?
If X9 happens, it definitely may most likely go back to basics, just like X4, with minimal backtracking and refining the gameplay once again, but with prettier graphics. But it's most likely going to also include some kind of major gimmick, kind of like the gear system in Mega Man 11.
Yeah, which I think is kind of what Capcom is seeing as the way to innovate the series.
And for the record, I do think the gear system looks really goddamn red. Can't wait to see if I can actually beat Mega Man 11 stages without abusing it.
I think that's going to be a trophy in it, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is important.
Most likely. And yeah, most of my feelings kind of overlap yours.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of contention about which mechanics the next Mega Man, whether it be X9, X12, or Mega Man 12, or another Zero, whatever. So there's a lot of contention about mechanics in these games because a lot of people liked the fact that 9 and 10 went back to basics, but a lot of people think that removing mechanics is terrible game design.
And I'm one of those people. I hate the fact that Mega Man 9 removed the slide. I loved the slide. And I honestly don't want X to degrade like that. I still want him to have the air dash by default.
Yeah, air dash is okay. Maybe not by default, but air dash is awesome. Well, I think one of the things with the X games that you see the series do is like introduce new mechanics in each game and then make those mechanics innate in the next one. So, for the best example of this is in the first one, you don't start with a dash, you get a dash after the first real stage. X2, you start with that dash, and then you get an air dash. And X3 gives you the air dash, and then you get an up dash. And then in 4, it kind of resets a little bit. It's whatever. And then X5 starts with all the armor in the 4th one, as does X5 and 6. Or X6.
Finally, he realized that he should have kept it.
Right, which, I mean, it makes sense canonically in the world for him to start with the air dash, but like in all those features. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird how the difficulty scales throughout the series. It's almost very organic. But I feel like you should have to kind of earn a few of those upgrades. Like the air dash shouldn't be necessary to complete the game, for example, but it should be something that you have to find. So I don't know. I don't like the armor parts being totally game changing either. I think X1 and even X3 do a really good job of this because like X3 to me the canon nerfs you in a way, like the arm upgrade nerfs you, and getting the armor in X3 actually feels progressive because it's like, oh hey, now I'm not taking as much damage, and it makes a huge difference. So I don't know, I kind of would like to see that design impetus in 9 if 9 actually happens, but I disagree about the slide. I think Mega Man 9 is my favorite classic Mega Man game because it stuck to what it was really good at. And I know the slide adds a lot of dynamism to the series, but I don't know. I don't think the game really benefits that much from it. And I think that it, like, by only being able to jump and shoot, I feel like it really adds a minimalism to the classic series that isn't there in X and Zero and Battle Network and the million other spin-offs.
To me, it just felt going backwards for no good reason because you removed slide and charge, and yet you kept the shop for Mega Man 7.
Yeah, I don't like that either, though. That the shop is kind of something I think should have gone the wayside with the slide. Then, like, stick to your philosophy, Inti creates.
But I want to grind for my E-tanks.
I don't know. I don't like E-tanks either. I mean, it's cool. It makes, to me, E-tanks are what changed the difficulty. And here's another thing that I firmly believe. I don't think that Mega Man games should have a difficulty option. I think the difficulty option relies on whether or not you use E-tanks, you use the shop. Those are the two things.
Same thing with the X series. Yeah.
X series too. I mean, like, one of the reasons why X1 is such a timeless game is because, and X2 is because they don't have anything that really is like hard mode besides like not getting the armor capsules, which would definitely influence the difficulty of the game for sure.
All the Mavericks in X2 are perfectly doable with just your default arsenal.
Oh yeah, same with X1. I think Armadillo and the Octopus are a little tough, but like it's not that bad. I think X2 has some bosses that are very annoying without it. Centipede and Snail to name two, but I don't know. What do you guys think? For the listeners out there, like, please tweet us, leave a message on the Reddit post. Do what you can. Try to engage us here. I'm really curious as to what the community as a whole thinks about these kind of things. What kind of features do you think should be added in X9 or removed? Like, what do you think works? What do you think doesn't? And hey, maybe that'll be a topic for another episode. So one of the things we didn't really get into talking about was just how we feel about the X games as a whole. So that's definitely on the table for next week. Other things like translations, like what we think the series evolved into, more detailed analysis, that kind of stuff is definitely in the future for us. So, anything that you want to touch on before we close out here?
Right. I probably should have said this a bit earlier, but I don't have any doubts that X9 is going to have an excellent art style and music, because the key art for the X Legacy Collection 1 and 2 is fantastic. Like, I
Right.
love the new renditions of the characters. And I love the remixes that they got for the 6 boss themes, as well as Refuture, which is actually an excellent boss track. Ooh, X Challenge spoilers. But yeah, I have no doubts that X9 will be very visually appealing.
Yeah, I think the PlayStation X4 style is probably what they'll probably. I mean, it's definitely going to be a 2D game. I almost could say that unequivocally.
To me, the most ideal art style for X9 would definitely be just like X4, X5, only with proper 16 by 9 ratio, and
Yeah,
the
like a more
sprites.
refined version.
Yeah, and the sprites are very high quality, very detailed, kind of like UbiArt games, you know.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the general consensus of the community. You know,
I will not mind if it's something like Maverick Hunter X, only much more polished than that. But we'll see. We'll see.
yeah. And one thing too that I kind of feel a little bit bad for is, and I want to make this clear, is that is this whole episode is mostly like a critique and analysis of the XLC. Like, I still firmly believe that anyone out there who is a fan or even a fledgling fan of the series should pick this up. It's a wonderful opportunity for newcomers and like hardcore fans aside. It's as a whole, I think the package is pretty good. It's $40 for 8 games. That's awesome. It does add some really interesting things in the museum mode. Like, there's a lot of features there to keep you a little bit busy. Um, at the same time, it also reeks of Capcom. So, I try. I think I ended up being more negative about it than I wanted to be, but it's. I really want everybody to pick this up. I want you guys to support it if you even like Mega Man in the slightest. Like, hey, it leads to an X9 possibly, or it just shows market interest in the series.
Right. So the collections are great for their price. It's basically just $5 per each game, which I would definitely recommend to any newcomer. Input lag is not a deal breaker, really. Even if you do notice it, you'll get adjusted to it pretty quickly. And even though it might not contain everything, it is still a pretty good startup kit for any newcomers. I would definitely plug Capcom for support.
Let's plug Capcom support for more things like this in the future.
Yeah, yeah, because let's not forget, Mega Man 11 happened because of the sales of the Legacy Collection. If you want to make X9 a reality, then buy it. However, if you're still not impressed with whatever it brings to the table aside from the definitive version of X7, I still think the X collection for the PS2 and GameCube is still pretty fine on its own right, as well as the PC version of X8. But yeah, especially on Switch, you can't go wrong with
Yeah.
Mega Man X on the go.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say too. I have this on PS4 and Switch, and also the PC version as well, which I haven't really touched. But I think it's ideal on Switch. I think that, by the way, if you if you map the dash to L1 like I did, and you play these games for a long time, the way that the force on the back of the controller ends up like, I have a callus. I had a callus on my index finger because of it. And so there's some ergonomic things I think work better with the Switch Pro controller. I don't really like the Joy-Cons much, but it's awesome to have a portable version of it. So I would personally recommend the Switch version the most. I think it actually has a little bit less input lag than the PS4. But if trophies are your jam and you want a relatively easy plat, go for PS4.
You still got the Hunter medals, but they don't really amount to much aside from unlocking
On the
the
Switch, yeah.
wallpaper.
Right, exactly. So would you say the Switch version is the one to go with?
If you cherish portability that much, yeah. Otherwise, PlayStation 4 version or the Xbox One version, you can't go wrong with either of these. The PC version has been kind of a mess, although it's patched up.
You have the added bonus of modding it too.
Yeah, and slightly higher resolution because you actually have some kind of semi 4K resolution for it, so it may actually allow you to have the old X games scale properly. Because if you notice on the health bar, there are some uneven pixels.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing that stands out for me the most.
That's purely because of the scaling for the 1080p resolution as well as 720p.
Right.
2160 or 58, I don't remember right now, resolution that the PC version offers would actually allow for proper pixel scaling. So, yeah, if you're willing to tweak and fix the PC version, then go ahead, go on Steam and buy there.
Right. So I think in general, just buy the game, damn it. Do it.
Do it.
Confused priorities aside, I think it's wonderful. So I think that's a pretty good closing thought to leave on. Just tune in next time. We'll be talking more about how we feel personally about each game in the series and giving our own little pedantic ranking. But in the meantime, you guys can follow us on Twitter at just Podcast Jump. So twitter.com/PODCASTJUMP. You could also email us at jumpandshootpodcast@gmail.com, or just hit us up on Reddit and throw some comments in the box. Give us some upvotes or downvotes depending on how you feel.
Give us some valid constructive criticism. Give us valid constructive criticism. That's all we're asking.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much, guys, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.